Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the live stream. A couple things you need to know. Yes, we are still doing this one. I'm just getting one last thing translated, and I'll have both the Spanish and English versions. We're also, based on this morning's meeting with Mr. Sampson, we're hammering out our final plan for how we're going to be proceeding with the AP test. Something else you'll need to know. I sent a bunch of information out to you guys to log into a new classroom I've created called the AP testing class. You will need to join that simply because that's what we're going to be using to help monitor you guys as you'll be taking the test. So that is up. I've sent out invites. I've seen a few people have joined it already. If not, I will be putting the code for Google Classroom into the description box right there at the bottom. Once I get this thing hammered out, I stop my live broadcast and I put it on Google Classroom. So you'll have that new Google Classroom to join. Also, make sure that you are able to log in to the AP, myap.collegeboard.org website. Once you've done that, be sure you change your email address. Do not use the ebrschools.org email. Make sure you're using an email that you have access to, because when that test starts, they'll send you a link through that website, and you're going to have to log into that link 15 minutes before the test day, the test time. I believe, if I remember correctly, the AP test for human geography will be on May 11th at 3 p.m. So just letting you know, putting that out there, letting you know that's what's going on. We've also decided that if you do take the AP test, whatever your grade is in the class, we're going to bump you up one letter grade. So if you have a D in the class and you take the AP test, you'll be bumped up to having a C. If you have a C, you'll get bumped up to a B. If you have a B, you'll get bumped up to an A. And if you have an A, you're just kind of sitting pretty. So we will give you more details on that one as they become available. Let me get this one done. Also, a number of people joined up. We had some new transfer students transferring in just before, in that March before, just before this entire coronavirus happened. So I had like 4 or 5 people who signed up, who got into the class. For those people, we do not have tests. You are actually not part. We had to do the testing, submit the names earlier in the year. If you do wish to take the test, you're going to need to get in touch with Mr. Sampson and Mr. Bradford. The reason why there's a cutoff point, according to Mr. Sampson today, he said that originally it was $99, I think, per person to take this test, but because it's so late, there's a late fee, so it's ramped it up to $125 per person. So if you are not listed as taking the test and you want to, you'll need to get in touch with Mr. Sampson or Mr. Bradford and make arrangements for that one, because they can add you to that one. So for all those people who were actually added just before this entire coronavirus thing happened, that first week of March before all the craziness, or the last week of February, first week of March, that was after the cutoff point. So you need to get in touch. If you do want to take the AP test, get in touch with Sampson and Bradford and see what y'all can hammer out about getting that done. All right, so let me pull this one up. All right, save. So let me go ahead and get this one up here. Save and exit. Have my Spanish translation up now. But right now we're going to be looking at the English one because that's what I'm going to be going live with. So I pull it up, start new English, link, copy. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you want the Nearpod, here it is. I've just added it in the comments. You can click on that one, follow through as I go through it. Today's is going to be really short because there's only one or two things you need to know today, and that is kind of how we're running this back to the original, the stuff we did at the beginning of the year. So we're looking at location, at site, and why people choose to put a business in one area. So on your screen, I'm going back to the Nearpod. Here's your bell ringer. And that question is, imagine you want to start a business. What are some things that you need to think about before you choose a location to build your business? What are some things? Why do you want to put your business here? So go ahead and take a moment or two, answer that one out. Currently, I don't have anyone signed on to Nearpod, which is kind of a shame. Sorry, I just had a text message here. So what are some things you would think about when you build your business, especially if it's a manufacturing business? Where do you put it? Why would you put it somewhere? Go ahead and think about it. Let's go forward. So our objective today, we're going to be doing a lot with sugarcane. And I want you to be able to use what's called Weberian analysis or Weberian. I don't know if it's Weber or Weber. I've heard it pronounced both ways. Let's see. This guy named Alfred Weber or Weber. How do we pronounce Alfred Weber? Oh, he's German. So apparently it's going to be Alfred Weber. Weber. So Weberian analysis. It's not Weber, it's Weber. And we're going to use that to describe Louisiana's sugarcane industry or Louisiana's sugar industry. Why does Louisiana sugar grow where it does? How is it processed? And we're going to be using this as a real life example because let's face it, guys, in this part of Louisiana, you probably see we got a lot of really two main things, which are petroleum and sugarcane and seafood. But on land, it's usually petroleum and sugarcane, especially if you ever get on Airline Highway. And if you take Airline Highway north and cross over the river on Airline into West Baton Rouge, all that around 61, Highway 61, that's all sugarcane, both sides. If you take Airline Highway south of Baton Rouge and you drive like you're going towards New Orleans, once you get past, I would say, Gramercy, those swamp areas on 61, you're going to see sugarcane as you get to Reserve and Laplace. Sugarcane on both sides of the highway. In fact, when I was growing up in Laplace, I told y'all this story, how me and my friends, we would go raid in the sugarcane fields and bring home sugar, then use our pocket knives, cut it up, and then chew on the inside of the sugarcane to almost like, a kid's version of chewing tobacco. Only instead of getting tobacco, we have pieces of sugarcane we're chewing on. All right. So first off, let's look at some factors of industry. And naturally, I've got Charlie Chaplin because it's one of my favorite movies of all time, Modern Times. Kind of makes fun of working in a factory, as well as it has a little bit of a socio-political message at the end. So if you ever get the chance to see it, I highly suggest it. One of the greatest, comedies ever made, Modern Times. So, all devices. So, our guy, Alfred Weber, comes up with this theory called the least cost theory. And according to him, The best place for manufacturing is going to be the place that reduces three types of costs. One is transportation, two is labor, and three is what's called agglomeration. Now, you already know what transportation is, moving things from point A to point B. You already know what labor is. That is people moving, working with their hands, or human productivity, your human workforce. But what is agglomeration? And here's your definition, but you're going to see it in action. Agglomeration is when you cluster different activities and people together so they mutually help each other. There's a mutual advantage. You're helping each other out. Case in point, in this video on here shows this. When you see agglomeration, one of the best places is going to be a shopping mall. Why do you think you're going to have certain activities and people clustered together in a shopping mall? Think about it this way. Next time you go to the Mall of Louisiana, second floor, you come outside of Sears and you walk around, what are you going to find? Nudge, nudge, hint, hint, wink, wink. The food court. You're going to have Raising Cane's, Chick-fil-A. You've got all of these different food items, Panda Express, Mandarin Express, all these different things. They used to have Sparrow Pizza. I don't think they have it anymore. It's kind of a shame. Sparrow wasn't good pizza, but it was pizza. So, hey, it works. But this is what agglomeration is. All those restaurants in the Mall of Louisiana are together. They're clustered together because they have mutual advantages. And that is, if someone gets hungry, they know where to go. And the way they're set up is that someone could stand in the center of all these different places and be able to choose what they want to eat. You'll also notice it, at least in the olden days, you would notice it with different types of stores, shops in the mall. At least with Mall of Louisiana's change up a little bit. But for example, you would find places that dealt with paper products would be a little bit different. They'd be put to the side. So you'd see places like Things Remembered or office supply areas next to Hallmark, and that'd be next to the bookstore because it's all kind of paper goods all in one place. So here's a little example here for those of you who are into Gucci. A little quick 2-minute example video. Here we go. All right, here we go. So that was agglomeration. You cluster these certain activities and certain things together for mutual advantages. That's why you're going to find gift shops like Build-A-Bear next to other places with gifts in the Mall of Louisiana. That's why you're going to find clothing stores next to bigger clothing stores. Case in point, back when Forever 21 was a thing, it's gone out of business now, sadly. You can actually go outside of JCPenney, and lo and behold, there's Forever 21. All right there. All right. So for Weber's theory to make sense, you have to think about 5 different assumptions he has to make. One is that the area in which you're talking about is going to be uniform, all the same. So, case in point, Louisiana, sugarcane. Think about it. What does sugarcane usually look like? Cane fields. What does Louisiana look like? Typically, it's all the same, right? Yeah, typically. I mean, you might get some red dirt when you go up north to, say, Alexandria and Natchitoches, but for the most part, Louisiana is mostly going to be rather uniform, rather the same. Also, it's going to assume that you're making one thing to send to one market. So just one item that you are making and sending it to one market. That's it. So one problem with this least cost theory is it does not deal with factories that make different things. And in some instances, you're looking at factories that will end up shutting down production of one thing to produce something else. Case in point, as you have no doubt heard or noticed, Ford and General Motors have actually converted a couple of their plants. So instead of making cars, they're making ventilators for hospitals, for patients. It's one of those things that just had to happen. There was a new market for it. Ford and GM could keep their people working at the plants by producing a new item. So they stopped producing cars during coronavirus, and they started producing ventilators instead. And they're sending those out to hospitals. So they can get those. The hospitals will pay for those ventilators. And what happens is Ford and GM can now pay their employees. Our third assumption is that you've got multiple sources for your raw materials. Because in this case, with those multiple sources, you have to choose which one you're going to be producing from. If you have, let's say, Louisiana sugarcane again, if you have 10 sugarcane fields, 10 different farms making sugarcane, that's your multiple sources for your raw material, right? Well, how do you choose which one you're going to be building the closest to? So that's where your multiple sources and least cost theory comes in. It's always going to be based on what you can get to the closest, which is going to be the nearest one for smaller transportation measures. The fourth one is that labor is available, but it is immobile. In other words, people are not moving far away from the industry. You have a steady stream of a workforce to run your industry. And lastly, transport is always going to be using the shortest distance because costs of transporting your things is going to be reflecting both the weight of the item and the distance it has to travel. So that's your 5 things you have to take in consideration and assume when you're doing this least cost theory. So to do this, what Weber did was he created a triangle. And with this location triangle, he's trying to find the area where it's going to be called the break of bulk. A place on this chart where goods are manufactured and transferred to get to your market. Now, in this case, as you can see from the diagram, you've got 2 different raw materials. Let's say you have a potato chip factory. Well, one raw material you need is naturally going to be potatoes. The second one you're going to need is going to be oil because you have to fry those potatoes, right? So according to Weber, you're going to want to keep your factory closer to the heavier good because think about it. What does it cost more to ship, the potatoes or the oil? In a lot of cases, you're going to be looking at potatoes. Because think about how many potatoes you can fry in 1 gallon of oil. You could easily slice up and fry maybe 20 potatoes into 1 gallon of oil. Probably not. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. So you're going to need to have your factory closer to the potatoes than you would the oil. So raw material 1, raw material 2. That being said, how much does it cost to get your finished potato chips to the people who are buying potato chips? Now, the reason why you need to take that in consideration is because food things, sugar, potatoes, oil, after a while they go bad. That's just the nature of the beast. However, some items don't go bad. These are called footloose industries. That it's not oriented to the market or to the resource. And in fact, with a footloose industry, your factory can be placed anywhere, especially for things that are not going to break down over time. Think about it this way. If you have a tomato farm, once you cut that tomato off the vine, that tomato is essentially dead. And after a while, you can refrigerate it if you want, but after a while, that tomato is going to start going bad. How many times have you opened a refrigerator door into the vegetable drawer and it just reeks? And when you dig around in there, you find out there's this one black tomato at the bottom. It's got fuzz growing on it. You have to keep those things close to your market. Get it to the people as soon as you can. However, things like gold or diamonds never go bad. So you don't need to keep them close to the markets. In fact, a lot of diamond mining nowadays and gold mining is happening in Africa. Places like, I don't know why I want to say Borneo, because Borneo is not now for Africa. Benin, Africa, or the Central African Republic, places with gold mines, Ghana, Mali, all these different countries. They're producing the gold there. They're mining it there. They're getting the diamonds out of the ground. And then because they're not shipping out, they're not, gold and diamonds is not going to be rotting or anything. So they can ship those worldwide. Now, because of as you should know, because of the history of slave labor in those areas, there's actually a lot of international scrutiny on gold and diamonds. So any gold produced in Africa or any diamonds mined in Africa, as soon as they hit the market, they're actually given a little card saying where it came from, who the mine, who owns the mine, what company owns the mine, and to verify that it's not being produced with slave labor. So that's it. The majority of our gold and diamonds and other precious materials around the world can be produced anywhere because they don't break down, they don't go bad. So here's another one. This one turns on its side. Supply 1, supply 2, and the market. As you can see here, they try to set it so that your factory is kind of right at the optimum level. You're close to the market. You're closer to one supply over the other, closer to the supply that costs more to transport. And your triangle, that factory, that star, is going to move around that triangle to whichever is the most optimal place for it. So here's a quick video. I'm not going to play the thing out. So if you want to pause the video here, pause the video I'm producing here, you can watch this. It's from Discovery Channel. This is how sugar is made. And it goes through the entire process from cutting the sugarcane plants to all the different steps to make actual granulated sugar that you put in your coffee or your tea. Or if you really want to feel brave, if you're into candy making. All right, let's go forward. So, practice. With this one, it's a draw it board. And what I want you to do is to actually use your laptops, use your Chromebooks to draw a Weber triangle to help explain the Louisiana sugar industry based on the video you just saw. So as you know, one of your raw materials is going to be the sugar cane. You need to find what your second raw material would be. And then between those two, you're going to go ahead and draw how it would look like going to market. So draw the triangle and then tell me where the best place for your factory would be. All right. Let's move forward. So the next slide is a collaborate board. This is going to cycle back to what we talked about our last time. We talked about bulk gaining industries and bulk reducing industries. As you know, a bulk gaining industry is when whatever you're producing weighs more than the raw materials. And a bulk reducing industry is going to be whatever you're producing weighs less than the raw materials. So, do you think sugar production in Louisiana, is it a bulk gaining or a bulk reducing industry? And be sure to put why. All right, so industrializing countries. We already know what our major industrial zones are. There's going to be North America, also called Anglo-America because, European history, places like United States, Canada, parts of Mexico. We have Europe, and we have East Asia, China, Japan. Those are going to be our three major industrial zones. And as you know, GDP in those areas, how we measure our development is going to be the total value of the goods and services produced within that country during a 1-year period. A specific time on there, but it's usually within 1 year. So very soon, I think in June they'll release the GDP numbers for the United States over 2019. So they calculate all this stuff together and they send it out to us. Industrializing countries also have what we call mass production. You all should know mass production, even if you don't know the technical definition. That's going to be producing large amounts of standardized products. In the case of Louisiana, sugar, seafood, oil, petroleum, gasoline. And oftentimes you'll see this done on assembly lines. So you'll have different stations and one person controls that one station. And it goes from one station to the next one until at the very end you have the final product. So, quick quiz for you. There's only one question. According to Weber's model of industrial location, where would you most likely find a sugar factory in Louisiana? I have a couple of choices there. Choose the one you think is the best one. I'll give you about a minute or so to go ahead and get that done and submit. All right, so let's go forward. Go ahead and submit your answers. Next slide. The answer, with the least cost theory, that would show that sugar plants, not sugar plants as in the plant itself, but the factory that makes sugar would most likely be located next to sugarcane fields. Why? Because least cost theory is all about minimizing the cost to transport the sugarcane to the factory. So a lot of times, especially in, say, Chalmette, St. Bernard Parish, you're actually going to be seeing the sugarcane grown in one place and maybe transported a mile, maybe 2 miles at the most to get to the plant. And then they'll have the plant there. There's plants, actually sugar plants all across South Louisiana, all the way from Lake Charles to New Orleans or Chalmette. It's all about minimizing the cost to transport that sugarcane to the factory. All right, so here is your exit ticket. Very last thing on there. I want you to do two things. One, explain the location of an industry in regards to raw materials and markets. Why you choose to build your industry where you do. And number two, explain Weber's least cost theory and how it applies to Louisiana sugarcane. Very quick, very easy. Like I said, there wasn't a lot to this one. I'm giving you a small chunk here to get you thinking about how things are developing, because when you're taking that AP test, it's actually going to really help you to think about this one and cycle back to the stuff we learned back in August and November, way back when. All right. So, once again, if you have any questions, my virtual office hours are from, I'm going to change them up a little bit. I'm going to make it 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You can always, if you have any other questions about anything, hit me up on my website, email address, which is emiller3@ebrschools.org. Keep in mind, I will be posting the new Google Classroom, that AP Human Geography testing class, onto the little text box right down there. You should be seeing that one as soon as I get this thing edited and posted. And after that, have a good weekend. So enjoy yourselves. I mean, come on. I know it's kind of a tough thing to do. Go outside, get some fresh air. You know, I mean, not telling you to go crowd up a shopping mall or anything, but just have fun. Do something with your hands. Be productive. I planted 50 tomato plants the other day, so take that as you will. All right, guys, have a good day. Enjoy your weekend. I'll be posting that stuff down there at the bottom. I'll see you Monday.